Welcome to Get Your Spirit in Shape, United Methodist Communications and UMC.org's podcast to help us keep our souls as healthy as our bodies. I'm Joy Avino. Today, I get to share with you a Meet a Bishop episode, something we haven't done in a long time. And my guest is Bishop Debra Wallace-Padgett of the North Alabama Conference. Bishop Debra Wallace-Padgett, welcome to Get Your Spirit in Shape.
Thank you. It's very good to be with you, Joe.
When I read your biography, I noted that your ministry began in Kentucky. Are you a native Kentuckian?
Yes. Prior to my election as a bishop, Kentucky was my home with the exception of 2 years when I was attending graduate school in Nashville.
Tell me about growing up in Kentucky. What are some of your memories there? What was it like when you were a young girl?
I grew up in the eastern part of Kentucky in Buchanan, a community of about 200 people. It was a great place to live with everything from a 2-room school that later consolidated to 1 room, Blue Bomb's grocery store, a post office, and the Pritchard Memorial United Methodist Church. We were near a railroad track as well as Route 23 highway. We had the Big Sandy River nearby, a baseball diamond and outdoor basketball court behind us, and hills and back roads all around us. There were a number of young families in the neighborhood, so there was never a dull moment.
It sounds like you're describing something Norman Rockwell would paint. So it was a good place to grow up. And what are your first memories of church? When did you start going to church?
I started going to a church when I was 6 weeks old. I was born on Father's Day, and 6 weeks later, I was in church with my parents and my 2.5-year-old brother, Rock.
Wow. So it was just something, it was part of your family. Every Sunday you guys were in church.
That is correct. My dad entered ministry as a pastor when I was 6 months old. But even before that, Mom and Dad faithfully attended church every Sunday.
So you were a preacher's kid, as we sometimes say, right?
I was a PK. That's
Yeah.
correct.
So was pastor always what you wanted to be when you grew up, when you were younger?
I did not even entertain the possibility of being a pastor when I was younger, Joe. There were not female pastors in the area where I lived. I didn't see female clergy role models. It didn't cross my mind that I would someday be serving as a pastor.
Wow. So what was it like when you think back on those days? What did you think you would be when you got older?
I wanted to be a professional athlete. I also loved music and thought I might be a musician. I enjoyed my teachers and also considered the teaching profession. In fact, when I went to college, my undergrad was in education, physical education to be specific.
I noted that. And I wondered about an athlete. I don't know why I made that assumption, but you were in physical education. I thought you might have been an athlete. What sport or sports did you play?
I loved all things sports. So it's difficult to name one. I particularly, though, played baseball and later softball and basketball. Those were the 2 sports that I played into my adult years.
Yeah. Are you still a fan?
Oh, yes. I love sports, and I enjoy watching basketball games particularly. But a tennis match, a baseball game, a football game. I've become quite the football fan since I've been living here in North Alabama.
I think I understand that, right? And the Alabama football is a big deal. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is. Well, in Alabama, you are either an Auburn fan or a University of Alabama fan. When people ask me, which am I, my answer is I'm a Birmingham Southern College fan, which is a United Methodist college here in Birmingham, on whose campus our conference center is located.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. Probably keeps you out of a lot of trouble too, right? To do that one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I enjoy both Auburn and Alabama. They have great football teams typically.
Oh, yeah. How did you get from physical education to pastoral ministry?
I was preparing in college to be a physical education teacher, and I enjoyed that a lot. However, the summer before my senior year in college, I was working on staff at Aldersgate Camp, a United Methodist camp in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And while there, I was introduced to the vocation of Christian education by a friend of mine who was 2 or 3 years older than me and had completed a degree in Christian education at Scarrett College and Graduate School in Nashville. After I did my student teaching, I sensed that I was being called to do something different than teaching vocationally. I checked out Scarrett, fell in love with the campus, and entered into the Masters of Christian Education program there. From there, I began working in local churches, first in the area of Christian education, and then later I became a ordained deacon, transitional deacon at that time, and then an elder. So that's how that transition occurred.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And who are some of the influential people? I mean, other than your dad, obviously, but some that were influential in your faith development?
Well, in addition to my parents, and they both were very influential in my faith development, there were grandmothers, uncles, aunts, my siblings, cousins, teachers, the manager of the camp I described earlier,
Mm-hmm.
Aldersgate Camp. All of those persons were influential with my own faith development.
I watched you light up when you said grandmother. Is there a particular story or memory of your grandmother's influence?
Both of my grandmothers were strong Christian women. They influenced me with the way they lived their lives. They were very engaged in the lives of their grandchildren, including me. They were positive and affirming. They both participated in church on a regular basis. My grandmother, Wallace, directed the children's choir at the church where my dad pastored. And so I had the experience of having her as the choir director when I was a child. So both of them had influence on me, certainly.
Yeah. And I imagine coming at pastoral ministry after a background in Christian education and education, there must be lots of lessons that you gleaned along the way that still inform your ministry today.
Oh, yes. The Christian education background was certainly informed by physical education. And what I learned in physical education and sports has applications to my life as a bishop and to my life as a Christ follower. So, for instance, the outcome of competition is based, I learned, not on one good or bad moment, but on the entire game. And in the same way, the final assessment of my tenure as a bishop, and even more importantly, the life I have lived as a Christ follower, will be made not on one decision or action, but on the entirety of my ministry and life. And the second example would be team matters. What I learned from playing on teams was that a team of good players can accomplish more together than the greatest athlete on earth who is working solo. Similarly, a strong conference leadership team can do so much more together than any one leader could do independently. And I'll give you just one more example. Though as an athlete, I sometimes did not feel nearly as energized by practice as I did by games, disciplined practices were necessary to prepare me for big game moments. As a Christ follower, I do not always feel inspired to pray, read scripture, and practice other spiritual disciplines. However, doing so daily prepares me for the big moments in life when I particularly need to draw up on my faith.
Yeah, yeah. The first one really got my attention about how the game isn't over till it's, the old Yogi Berra thing, right? Right? It isn't over till it's over.
That's
I
right.
just really enjoy that way of thinking about it, that you're not going to be judged on one event. And so there's always this sense of, oh, I've messed it up so badly now. And that's a good reminder that no.
It's a great reminder that I learned in sports. When you're playing basketball, you just can't play it perfectly. I mean, if you hit 50% of your field goal attempts, then you're doing well. If you hit 85% of your free throws, you're doing great. But that means you've missed 50% of your field goal attempts and you've missed 15% of your free throws. So it's so important to not focus on the misses, but to keep moving forward and keep making those attempts, knowing that sometimes you get it right and sometimes you get it wrong. And that's how it is as a Christ follower, as I've experienced it. I hope that I get it right more times as I grow in my spiritual development. But on this side of heaven, none of us get it right all the time. We're on the process, right, of
Yeah.
being sanctified.
Yep.
And if we focus too much on the misses, then that potentially paralyzes us in our own growth and development.
That'll preach, as they say, right? That's amazing. I love that. I love that. I want to ask you about your pastoral ministry. When you were a pastor, what were some of the pastoral tasks that energized you the most? Like what was exciting to you about pastoral ministry?
I love so many aspects of pastoral ministry. I particularly enjoyed baptizing people
Hmm.
and leading people into relationship with Christ. I liked receiving new members into the church,
Sure.
visiting with guests to the church, preaching, teaching, pastoral care, and working with staff and lay leaders in developing teams. Those were some of the favorite
Yeah.
parts of pastoring.
It's just such a broad job. It's good to you kind of get a sense of like, what were the things that were exciting? Same question about being a bishop. And I usually ask this way, like, what's the best part of being a bishop?
People and churches I serve are so inspiring, Joe. Hearing the stories of how God is at work in the United Methodist Church in general, and specifically the area where I serve, truly encourages my spirit. Also, I love discerning vision with leadership teams.
Yeah.
So, for instance, in my current context, the vision is spiritual leaders empowering life-giving congregations to transform the world. Now, that's a vision that is energizing and truly leading an annual conference toward a vision of spiritual leaders empowering life-giving congregations is a privilege.
Yeah. I noted too, part of your role as a bishop is that you serve on the World Methodist Council. And I'm not sure a lot of people know what that is. Can you just give us a little bit of that and what your role is there?
Yes. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about a ministry that I so appreciate. The World Methodist Council consists of more than 80 Methodist, Wesleyan, and related uniting and united churches that collectively includes 80 million plus members in 134 countries.
Wow.
So it's a very global council. And the council provides a witness to Methodist unity and mission. It encourages ecumenical relationships among its member churches, as well as interreligious dialogue with those in other faith traditions. It emphasizes the great commandment to love God and neighbor and the great commission of making disciples. And it does this primarily through evangelism, a prophetic voice, cooperative programs, faithful worship, and mutual learning. And on the World Methodist Council, I am the chair of the Committee on Evangelism. This committee networks among the participants about what's happening in evangelism in our local context. it's really amazing to hear how the good news is being shared across the world in a variety of ways. And it varies from context to context.
Yeah.
We also plan evangelism workshops for the World Methodist Conference. And that conference typically happens about every 5 years. And we work closely with World Methodist Evangelism, which is an independent entity growing out of the World Methodist Council 50 years ago this year. So the World Methodist Evangelism is 50 years old. And World Methodist Evangelism trains, resources, and gathers Wesleyan Christians around the world with training events like the Order of the Flame, podcasts such as Real Faith, Real World, and publications like Embrace. And to find out more about the World Methodist Council or the World Methodist Evangelism, you can Google it and learn a lot about how wide its reach is and how numerous its ministries are.
Yeah, and we'll share a link on our page too for it so that people can find it. On a much lighter note, I know that being a bishop is a very time-consuming job, but when you have time just for yourself, when you're doing something just for yourself, what do you like to do?
In the last 3 years or so, I've resumed playing the piano regularly.
Huh?
I had exited that practice for decades. I've resumed it though, and am finding it to be an enjoyable creative outlet as I relearn how to play the piano. I also walk 30 to 40 minutes or so a day. On a good day, it'll be 45 minutes. Prior to the pandemic, I was lifting weights 2 to 3 times a week at an exercise facility at one of our United Methodist churches here in Birmingham, the Vestavia Hills United Methodist Church. My husband, Lee, and I are avid day hikers.
Oh, wow.
Several years ago, one of the clergy couples in North Alabama, Reverends Kelly and Dale Clem, gave us a book entitled 60 Hikes Within 60 Miles, Birmingham. That book has literally taken us all over Alabama with hikes ranging from less than a mile to several miles.
Yeah.
We have about 12 more to go, and we hope to complete them during my tenure in North Alabama. I must tell you, though, that the 12 remaining hikes are in the range of 8 to 14 or 15 miles. So they're going to be a challenge for us.
Yeah. That's awesome though. What a great way to see an area that slowly on those hikes. That's a fantastic, what a great idea for a book. Yeah, that's wonderful. I finally want to return to your sports metaphor, which you captured so beautifully what we do on Get Your Spirit in Shape. And the reason why we call it Get Your Spirit in Shape is what are the things that you do to keep your spirit in shape when you're practicing before the game? What is one of your practices?
That is such a good question. Regularly practicing the holy habits of prayer, reading scripture, fasting, worshiping, giving, serving, journaling are keys to keeping my spirit in shape, I've discovered. And then there is Sabbath observance. In recent years, I have taken Sabbath observance more seriously than I ever did previously. I've learned that my spirit recalibrates when I observe a 24-hour period of time each week to focus on being instead of doing. I'm a doer, so being is not as natural for me, but I have learned to love it. In addition to experiencing rest and renewal, Sabbath has taught me a great lesson, and that is God is fully capable of running the universe without my assistance.
It puts it in perspective a little bit, doesn't it?
It's totally in perspective.
Well, Bishop, thank you so much for taking this time. This was just a wonderful conversation, and what a wonderful way to get to chat with you and meet you.
Thank you, Joe. I have thoroughly enjoyed our time.
That was Bishop Debra Wallace-Padgett of the North Alabama Conference of the United Methodist Church. To hear more conversations with our bishops and other leaders of the United Methodist Church, go to umc.org/podcasts and look for this episode of Get Your Spirit in Shape. We've put some links on the page to the World Methodist Council and Bishop Debra's official bio. Also on the page is a transcript of this conversation and my email address so that you can share with me your ideas about Get Your Spirit in Shape. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back soon with another conversation that will help us keep our souls as healthy as our bodies. I'm Joey Avino. Peace.